Katsinas.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of February 21st, 2022.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Milani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye.
Sponsorship opportunities?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to recommend to the Village Board to approve sponsorship opportunities as discussed and approved during the March 7th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present these new opportunities. So over the years, we've been producing a sponsorship guide, which summarizes a lot of opportunities for businesses and organizations to support events in our facilities. In this past year, we developed some new opportunities we want to present to the board for discussion and approval. So in this slide here, and it might be a little hard to see, you can see the different total revenues every year from 2016. So 2016 is all the way on the right side, all the way to last year, 2021. The gray box at 2019, that was our high mark. In 2019, we had 4 very large sponsors, so we did really well in 2019. Last year, you can see it was pretty close to the amount that we earned in 2018, so we're starting to recover from the pandemic. As we move forward, we want to look for new opportunities to keep increasing sponsorship support. This is sponsorship by event, and again, the middle one is the Taste of Orland Park, and so you can see that it spiked there. The other ones that are on there are Market at the Park and the Brew Fest. Those are the 2 that do really well. All the rest have some sponsorship support, but minor support from there. So some of the things we want to present and have you consider are digital opportunities, light pole banners. We have quite a few opportunities for light poles associated with events and not associated with events. Facility and park naming rights, poster ads that could be in our buildings, park banners, pool banners, ground decals. We use ground decals at the pool that very effectively for members, and the ice rink, both banners and decals.
So going back to digital, you're talking about digital advertising, not digital signage, right?
Correct. No digital signage at all. So this would be the digital, so it would be social media. We would do special events, sponsor ads with our social media posts, so we would allow that on the village website for those that sponsor events or facilities. There might be specials that they'd be allowed to present and or coupons. Our newsletter, which goes to over 9,300 email addresses, would include sponsor embedded ads, which again could include specials or coupons. Light pole banners, so we do really well with light pole banners in the village. The Hometown Heroes program last year was very effective. So as we look at potential opportunities, this would be something that we could offer to sponsors. And those are some of the locations there. Most of these would be associated with a special event, but they could also be standalone where you just allow a potential business just to have a banner on one of our light pole banners. We see Centennial Park, which is a very popular destination, could be a very effective one to sell to sponsors. Naming rights, so we have quite a few facilities to consider for naming rights. They would be potentially exclusive and would include things like facility wall signage, publications where a publication or a facility was named in a publication. The facility webpage would be on there, as well as social media posts. Some of the places that we're considering are the sportsplex, weight room, the gyms, the soccer field, the climbing wall, Centennial Park West concert venue. There's a very good opportunity there for a large naming right. At Centennial Park and John Humphrey Complex, the athletic facilities present an opportunity, as does the All Abilities Field and Playground at John Humphrey, and the ice rink, and then any future developments in our park. So for example, Dugan Park has some opportunity there.
Yeah, I think, Centennial Park West, I think if someone ponies up $10 million, we'll allow them to have naming rights for Centennial Park West, right?
We might even consider
It could be done.
There might be some negotiation in there. We might be able to come down a little bit on that, but.
Very good.
That's what I'm, well, the camera guy's not looking at me, but they're hearing it. So just to be clear, that that $10 million to fix Centennial Park certainly we could go with naming rights.
We'll do a lot of publication that way. We'll do a lot of sharing. And then there's some smaller ones here that might be good opportunities for those that can't afford the $10 million price tag. So some facility posters at Sportsplex, in Franklin Loby Center, the Cultural Arts Center, even the Orland Park Health and Fitness Center. So there's a lot of people out there that might just like to have posters, and you can kind of see that in the photo on the right there. That's a poster in a display case. In park banners, so we could put them in parks to a limited extent. We wouldn't want all our parks filled with those banners, but on tennis fences, baseball fences, or even on some different areas in the parks in a tasteful manner. At the ice rink, we're purchasing some new skate aids, and the new skate aids have a little front to them that would allow a decal to be attached to that. And we did some limited sponsorship at the warming house and on the banners last year at the ice rink, so those could be good locations. At the pool, we actually have 6 locations for banners. We've used those to promote events, could also be used for sponsorships, as well as the sidewalks, slide towers, concession building, and even the dog park, where it has a lot of fences, could be a good opportunity for someone who's looking for some exposure related to the dog park or otherwise. And those are all the things that we're hoping that you'll consider, and that then we would jump on and begin to offer.
Any comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy, he wants presidents.
That's it later in the show, will you? For people that apply for sponsorship, is there a vetting process, or is there, if somebody comes in, let's say, wants to put, re-elect Kim Fox, or hashish for sale, or just some of the things that may not be as, there are rules, or do we have guidelines, or are we able to put our own guidelines in?
So I would have to turn to Dennis on the political side. I don't believe we allow the political part of advertising in our sponsorships. When it comes to anything else, so something that would incite violence, drugs, something inappropriate nature, sexual nature, those kinds of things, we could turn those kinds of things down. Other than that, if somebody were to come in and say it was a chiropractic, some, I don't know, nutritional supplements, those kinds of things, you really can't turn all those things down. The only other caveat we have, and we're actually working with a potential sponsor now for the taste, is that for a certain level at a title sponsorship, you can do an exclusive. So, for example, when Payless and Loyola were the sponsor of the taste, they were the exclusive medical sponsor, so we can define it that way.
Exclusive medical, so there were other sponsors besides them. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Milani.
A question about the sponsor, like the banners for the fences. Would we kind of think about maybe just doing that at like Centennial Park, places like that where we might have tournaments or something like that? It'll have large amount of traffic, because I mean, we kind of had issues with just putting up a home run fence in some of our parks. So to go put a home run fence and add a bunch of banners, I think we might have some issues with that.
We could certainly do that. In fact, in the current sponsorship guide, that includes Centennial Park and John Humphrey Park. So we were looking just to expand that opportunity.
And one of the things that we have done, I believe, with those parks, so that people aren't getting freebies along high-vis, for that low dollar amount, they all have to be turned into the field, correct?
They have to face inwards.
They all have to face inwards to the fields.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Radiszewski.
So for the banner ads, is there a length of time? So is it just for, say, Taste of, Orland Park? Is it just during?
Most events are just one season. Some of the banners have additional opportunities. So if you're in the parks or at Sportsplex on the walls, those can be from 1 to 3 years for different prices.
Okay.
Some of those things that weren't presented tonight are in the sponsorship guide, which is available on the website as well.
I did take a look at the guide, and it's very well done.
Yeah.
And so for the social media, that's new to have the advertising,
Correct.
Incorporated in it. So I like that you're kind of thinking outside the box and thinking about other ways to, reach the right people and to, obviously up our sponsorship. So well done.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Milani?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye.
Stormwater Master Plan.
We can go ahead.
Travis. Well, I'll introduce them. Travis Perry with Seabell. Christopher Burke will be doing a presentation. He supported our public work function of evaluating all our dry and wet basins this past year, and we want to present that information today as information only to you.
Thank you for having me. Like Joel said, this will be for phase 1, the evaluation of the stormwater basins, with phases 2 and 3 being the actual storm sewers themselves, and then eventually the creeks and streams. So we were contracted to evaluate all of the village-owned municipal ponds, and there were 186 that we evaluated. There was 20 different evaluation elements, criteria that were set forth between Seabell and staff. Basically every part of a pond that you can look at, and then also all the areas surrounding the ponds, all the village property, all the infrastructure, how the water comes in, how the water goes out, so the pipes, the overflow weirs, all of the shoreline, essentially any part of the pond was evaluated and provided feedback on. Some of the big things that we took a look at were the excessive sedimentation, so that's the sediment rolling into the pond, and then, as you guys know all too well, neighbor encroachments onto village property, and then the wildlife concerns, and then if there was anything that notable from the design versus how it was constructed, and then any excessive vegetation, items like that. So these were the forms that we utilized, and turned it back over to staff that checks through all of those different criteria. And then at the end of the evaluation, we provided a summary report to staff, just kind of stepped through everything, all the different types of ponds that we worked on, and then the potential discussion items and then remedies associated with those. So up on the board there's listed the primary ones that we were seeing. It's about 867 pages is what we ended up with for the final report there. But the gist of it is every pond that the village has is in some sort of state of degradation. The best analogy that I can give is it's kind of like a brand new car. You drive it off the lot. The second you drive it off, it starts depreciating and deteriorating. And it's the same thing with the ponds. Even some of the newest ponds, built in the 2000s, they're now 20-some years old. But we have much older ponds in the village, and those are the ones, as you would anticipate, need the most amount of work. So the ones that are 40 to 60 years old. So with the sedimentation, so that's the deposition of sediment in the ponds being the primary issue causing most of the problems. There's a lot of the natural elements. Some time ago, the village went to naturalized basins, and some of those have not been maintained, and so generally speaking, they're overgrown and a lot of issues with those guys. Shoreline erosion, that's another one that we see a lot, and that can come from the wave action on the shorelines themselves or wildlife, beavers, muskrats, things like that. Mowed lawns, there are a lot of manicured basins in the village, and those may not look like they have issues, but they definitely are hiding some sedimentation. In some cases, it was a few feet deep in those mowed lawns. And then, of course, just the infrastructure that leads to ponds, the pipes, those types of things also has a lot of infrastructure needs. So after we evaluated all the ponds, we broke them down into 5 different categories, 5 being the most urgent need, and then 4, 3 on down. So this is just a representation of the 13 ponds in the village that were ranked as needing the most work. And this is about 7% of the village's ponds. And they're kind of spread throughout the village, but they're broken down to the different types of pond. So the dry ponds, open water ponds, and then the overgrown ponds. So the overgrown ponds are the ponds that were so in need of so much attention that we couldn't even really evaluate them appropriately. So some of those are ranked highest first. And then the needs, the costs associated with the needs that are represented on here. So we have some typical costs for shoreline repair, and these all varied, depending how you were to do it. If you were to go hard armoring, like riprap or something, you would see versus vegetative, those numbers will differentiate. The vegetation management, brush clearing, so different items. So just for a representative cost estimate, for the 13 ponds that we have here that were ranked the highest, it's about $5.7 million based on these numbers provided to bring those up to a level 1. And then there are the next set after that is the 4s, and there are about 25% of the village's ponds are in that 4 range, so for a scale of quantity. So then we just have some of the issues at the different locations. So this is seat in place, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about regarding, the vegetation management. A lot of the ponds that we were seeing, it wasn't so much the vegetation, it was the woody growth. Those, some people think that trees help hold it in place. Actually, trees are bad for most ponds because the roots cause it to become compromised. You can see the different pipe issues, the flared-in section, the separated pipes. Those are very, very common. A lot of animal activity, muskrats, erosion. You can see the water quality that's associated here. Pretty much every pond, every open water pond that the village has is trending toward eutrophic, which is when there's too many nutrients, they just wash into the pond and then they can't, it kind of snuffs out everything else. It grows algae and grows all the bad things, but then it, doesn't allow any type of wildlife, good wildlife, fish, and that to continue. So. Lake Lucille, I think you guys are probably familiar with this for a number of reasons, but these are just some issues with the infrastructure there. You can see the type of water quality, the encroachments, and then people kind of doing their own shoreline erosion, their own types of things to try to prevent this. You can see some wildlife, some settling, the different types of erosion control, the homeowners coming in and doing their own work, pipes leading out into the pond that it just allows the erosion to come back up into the property. Same sort of issues. Here's some of the vegetation, lack of maintenance. This is almost all this vegetation is invasive. Homeowners encroaching, storing things, your own riprap control here, erosion control. Sediment materials washing down into the pipe, causing further degradation. And then, of course, uses of the pond there. And again, the trees are one of the primary examples of the erosion. So that is the gist of the stormwater evaluation.
So we have, 13 ponds here that are considered to be high priority?
Correct.
What are we looking at from a cost perspective, ballpark?
About 5.7 to bring them up to a 1.
Mr. Mayor?
And is it budgeted? So
Not this year. The plan was that we could look at some in-house, not all of it, obviously, but our plan was to use some in-house for some of the structures and so forth. But then also we can look at the ecological contractors to look at some of the sediment and so forth. But we have to kind of prioritize and figure out, we have about 300,000, I believe, to do some work, I think, this year. So
So this is part of our 5-year financial plan that we're going to be working on. There's a number of elements, and this is a very important capital portion of it. When we have this report in place, it's more than 5 years, right? So we know that we have to be doing this stuff every year, but because we haven't been doing it, we have a large catch-up to do. So that $5 million is what we hope to phase in over years. We're not going to get it all done immediately.
correct.
And then we stay on course. Then we use the report to make sure that in 5 years from now, we're on to the level 4 or whatever else we need to do.
Trustee Reardon?
Yeah, a couple of questions. These are only ponds owned by maintained and owned by the village? These aren't private ones that we had those issues with earlier last year that we thought were ours, or they thought they were theirs, and that whole situation? So they're just ours?
Just ours.
Okay, and secondly, 5.7 for 13, those are level 5. A number, obviously there's 186, so the numbers get a lot bigger as we get down to 4, 3, 2, we would expect, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cost would go down because they're not as degraded as much as the first 13. Is that somewhat
Correct.
accurate?
Yep, correct. You would anticipate that. And the 5.7, that's, sort of the worst case scenario. If, every item that we listed was contracted out and addressed, they were dredged fully,
That's my next question. You can just stop there because it's going to be, what does that mean to be level 1? I'm not familiar enough to know. And is there a standard out there that we have to be level 1? Is there 5 levels? What does that mean to us?
Yeah, no, that was just the evaluation criteria that we used, with one essentially being a brand-new pond that was, constructed and developed and maintained to the village's current standards, per the code. And then we kind of, backed it up from there.
And maybe it was in the material that I didn't get the chance to read everything on there, but is there somewhere where there's a reasonableness standard where it says, okay, we've improved it, repaired it to stop? We haven't gotten it all the way back to 1, but we've got to where it's going to stop degrading and it's not going to continue to affect and cost us more money going forward. Is there somewhere in between there that?
Yeah, I think that's probably about the level 3.
Okay.
Where you're getting to the point where it's not getting any worse.
Yep.
And you kind of got it to a point where you can begin to achieve the 2 and the 1.
Maintain it properly going forward. You probably
Correct.
can stay in that standard somewhere.
Correct. It's just that those initial few steps are going to be really expensive because it's been so long since, some of them were built and not maintained.
So these, so level 3 is kind of the ongoing state. Are we able to get these to a state where they're at an ongoing state? We're not continually doing this. I mean, obviously we've dealt with this with roads, we've dealt with this with parks, we've dealt with this with buildings, we're dealing with this with trucks, right, and vehicles. So now we're dealing with ponds. Are we going to get to a point where there's a steady state and they're maintained and we don't find ourselves in getting things that far down the road where it's this expensive to fix?
Yeah, I think it's a
regular maintenance takes care of the problem.
Sorry, a double-edged sword where we have the 1s and 2s that we need to keep maintaining them now so they don't get to a 3 or a 4 down the road, but we also have the ones that we need to address immediately.
Right.
So it's a...
We can't let anything else get worse.
Right.
Correct.
Right? We can't let any of the 1s and 2s get worse, right?
And that's the plan, Mayor, is to really kind of put together the plan for 5 years, like George mentioned, tackle the 5s, try to bring those back down to a steady state, and then just keep working it every year to bring the ponds to those levels. So a good question might be, we do structures like this year with our in-house staff, but we can get to the pond later to maybe do a full dredge, down the road. We can do several ponds, the dredge, and it kind of brings it up to a better standard and so forth. We can do ecological around the edges and take care of that.
And we did find the ones where you guys are right now using your program to maintain the ponds to the naturalized vegetation. Those are almost exclusively the 1s and 2s. So the program that you have in place, it is working.
It is
Absolutely.
working. We're not adding to the list.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're not moving down. They're not moving to the bad direction on the.
It was easy to note those basins that I've already.
One more question, I'm sorry. Are all of these ponds, if we looked at them, they're all necessary? They're all serving a purpose in terms of stormwater or flow or whatever? I mean, is that analysis been done? Again, I'm not trying to take away anyone's pond if it's in their neighborhood or whatever, making sure that they're serving a purpose and we're not maintaining something that has no purpose, that we could drain it and, over a 5-year period, not have some expense to keep maintaining something that isn't doing anything to assist us. If that made sense. Anybody know the?
They're all doing something.
They're all doing something.
They're all part of our stormwater system.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We need more of it, not less. I know that.
I don't know that we need more, but we need them functioning fully. I think 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we needed more.
Yeah.
I think we've addressed, by and large, we've addressed the flooding issues of the village that they had, decades ago.
Yeah,
and
these are all
that's been
part of that
addressed.
system,
We
I guess,
know
is
where
my
the
point.
flooding issues are now, and they're not threatening structures and that, other than the ones we know of, the 3 state roads and 2 subdivisions where we have fixes, I think, budgeted this year to get done. Grasslands and tall grass, I think, are the 2. And then the rest of them, people's backyards may get water, but that's okay. They're actually designed to do that. I know it's hard for people to understand that, yes, your backyard it's okay if it gets water. That's kind of part of the plan as long as it recedes. And, that does happen if we get really heavy rains.
You hit it on the head as well. It's a system. And so MWRD really is looking to maintain those existing system structures, because they do not want water released into creeks and rivers faster than what is nature designed. And so really those things is our responsibility to maintain.
Right. And how many of the 186, how many were 1s and 2s?
I don't know that I have that on top of my head. I mean, obviously, there's the 69% that are 1, 2, or 3s.
Okay.
I'll get that for you tomorrow.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Radiszewski.
So you said for the sedimentation, you're doing the dredging. When you're doing the dredging, are you bringing it back to the state when it was first created? And how does that, with the rainfall, I mean, how is that calculated?
Yeah, so
is it like
those
a
are
100-year rule, or, I mean, obviously that's probably changed since some of those were even developed.
Yeah, so those are questions that would need to be answered before you guys were to move forward with these. Each one would kind of need to be evaluated. What we would be required to do is to maintain the permitted volume, by either the village or MWRD. So that number would be set. But below the water surface elevation, so the dead storage, that's subject to change. That's kind of at the village's discretion. If you wanted to take a wet bottom pond and convert it to dry bottom or wetland style, you certainly could do that. You don't have to keep it wet bottom. You just need to maintain the volume that was permitted. So those are options that would be available to you to maybe reduce the costs, so you don't have to go in and completely dredge something and then haul it off, because those come with its own costs and implications.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Malani.
So when we did our parks and we evaluated them, we did the kind of like, okay, here's the ones that need the most attention, and we prioritized those, and then we went to the next ones, and then we categorized everything, what we could fix first to get the biggest bang for the buck. And I think that worked well, obviously, with our parks. Are we going to apply the same strategy to these? It's like there's some work we can do on all of these, get it all done, and it's going to bring us a ton better than where we're at today?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll tackle definitely the 5s.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Compass.
Just to add to Trustee Reardon's question, I understand that these are only the village-owned ponds. We've had situations recently, Tinley Creek comes to mind. We've had a privately owned or association-owned situation where we've had to step in as a village. How do we know of the privately owned? What can we do? I don't want to bring this into scope. I don't want to own those ponds, but how do we make sure that those caretakers are doing the right thing so that we don't get to a situation like we did with the creek?
So I'll jump in. I don't know if they have an answer. So what I know we do check our inlets, or our outlets, really, because it's their pond distributing the water to our system. So when we are checking those systems, we are looking at the ponds if we see something that is need of care. We can go back to code enforcement. Code enforcement can then relay this information to the homeowners and provide that information to them to say, hey, your pond we see these following things happening. And
we could we'll look to see if there is something we could do more proactively. But at the end of the day, if the board recalls, ponds now are going to be owned by an association,
right? And
they will be backstopped with an SSA. So when we go ahead and when we're doing our inspections, obviously we don't want to cite them, but what we do want to do is we have to make sure that they are functioning the way they should. So we'll just make sure that we do have a solid program for that.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Katsinas.
Just a quick question. Are there any grants or funds available on a state or federal level that would assist with the cost?
There are funds available. 319 grants would probably be applicable.
We apply for grants for everything we do, whether it's roads, whether it's ponds, parks, everything that we do. We are very aggressive in getting grant money.
And we will definitely try to get grants for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the annexation study.
2022 annexation study update.
Go ahead.
Let's see here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, other members of the Village Board. Tonight before you is an update to the 2007 Village of Orland Park annexation study. To give a little background, the Development Services Department prepared a comprehensive study of all of unincorporated areas that potentially could be annexed by multiple different mechanisms to the village. Since that time, and a result of that study, 600 acres of land have been annexed into the village, including 300 acres of Forest Preserve District land. So in 2021, the Development Service Department took the 2007 study as a basis to take a look at what potentially has changed and are there any areas that the village should consider pursuing annexation, or are there areas if it's better to have potentially a developer come forward with a proposal. The purpose, again, is to identify these areas so we're aware of some of the challenges or potential opportunities for the village. Also, to expand upon the existing framework that the 2007 study laid out, identifying fiscal reasons, stormwater concerns, nuisances, potential other municipalities looking to potentially annex a similar piece of property. And then in order to take all these areas, we identified evaluation factors that would help us understand the challenges and rank and prioritize some of these annexations. The Development Services Department, in conjunction with engineering, public works, finance, the entire village, we undertook this effort, and I appreciate everyone's help because it took a long time. But it's worth it, and it will help guide us, hopefully, for the foreseeable future. Let's see, and then as I go through some of the highlights of the study itself, we will have be seeking direction from the committee on the next steps, and we've prepared sort of an outline of what we would like to do. So in terms of evaluation factors, just to kind of get into that, some quick ones. What is the development potential of the property that we're talking about? If it's a highly ideal piece of property and a developer would potentially be interested in, it would be in the best interest of the village to wait for that development to come forward. Reason being is if the village annexes a piece of property voluntarily, so the petitioner wants to be part of the village for services or any other reason, the Village of Orland Park by no means has any obligation to annex that piece of property. However, they can require of that developer many things associated with the development that they wouldn't necessarily be able to unless they came forward. So it's important that although there may be an unincorporated piece of property that potentially we may want to annex, it would be in the village's best interest to consider what the potential of that property is. In addition, we would want to look at, if we were going to annex a piece of property, some of the existing issues. Are there code enforcement issues? Are there stormwater issues? Are there roads built to the village standard? All of those things the village has to consider, because ultimately, once it becomes the village's responsibility, we have discussions about ponds and roads and expensive millions of dollars things. So we would have to consider the costs. Also, with any new property that's added to the village, there's potential revenue sources. So whether it be a commercial piece of property and there's sales tax associated with a new development, or in general just the property tax difference that you would see from a piece of property being incorporated in the village versus in an unincorporated area. And ultimately, the board and staff should consider the benefit to the village overall. Potentially, it may assist this one property owner with connecting to utilities, but does that benefit the entire village? So if this person is making their development viable, but it costs taxpayer money to upgrade other areas surrounding that property, it may not be worth it. So after I said all that, we're going to tell you what annexation is. It's the legal incorporation of land into a municipality. The village would extend its services either through direct or indirect agreements, and all of the land once annexed is subject to all of the municipal ordinances. There's several methods. The one that I was describing the most is if a petitioner approaches the village with a development that is adjacent to existing village boundaries but not incorporated. In that case, given that the development proposal is supported by the staff and village board, the staff and village would entertain the review process of the proposed development. Everything would be subject to annexation, and the village would be, I wouldn't necessarily say required, but allowed to request certain conditions of that developer and development in the annexation agreement. Now, there are other ways to annex a piece of property in the state of Illinois. So it allows municipalities to annex contiguous, unincorporated land through several different means and methods, and also it has to meet certain conditions. So the most commonly known method would be the village annexing a piece of property by ordinance, also known as involuntary, unilateral, forced. There's many different terms for what that means, but essentially a piece of property has to be less than 60 acres in size. It must be contiguous, and it must be surrounded by the village entirely, with some exceptions. Those exceptions are very confusing, but they're listed in the statute. And essentially, let's say the village surrounded this piece of property by its boundaries on 3 different sides, and one side was the forest preserve. Case law has shown, and I think the rules even state it directly, that counts as fully surrounding a piece of property. There are other instances like that it oftentimes gets to a delicate interpretation, or sometimes several different interpretations to determine if the statute was followed. But those are the several options that the village has in terms of annexation. So this slide is a little difficult to read, but it was included in your packets and included in the entire study. If you can faintly make out the green, yellow, and red, that is the most important part. The green indicates areas that the village staff is recommending to annex. Those pieces of property have potentially little development potential, maybe some significant natural areas, or maybe on the edge of town that are eligible for annexation to potentially another municipality. We would want to preserve our boundaries, preserve those natural features. It's outlined, perhaps it could be in an unincorporated area, and the current zoning in the unincorporated land could dictate a land use that is not recommended by the village. So forcing that annexation or annexing the property by ordinance would allow the village to protect their land use preferences or regulations. The neutral sort of category would be in a situation where it would be eligible potentially for a forced annexation, but there isn't necessarily a strong reason for it or against it. Those are outlined. And then the red, annexed by agreement only, is if the village were to annex these properties by ordinance, they would give up the ability to condition an annexation agreement. The property would, if it's annexed by ordinance, the village cannot add any conditions to that. The owner of the property doesn't necessarily have to agree with the village's choice to annex the property. They are allowed to use it in a legal, non-conforming fashion so long as they are the owner. But once it's incorporated into the village, if it's not associated with a rezoning, it will be assigned the village's most restrictive land use district, which is E1, which is standard for any property that's annexed without a proposed rezoning.
So if, I'm just spitballing here, you have a house, okay, it's obviously not built to village codes, built to county codes, which are not the same and are much less.
Correct.
If we force annex it, we're going to get property tax on it, which makes sense because we're probably, in these cases, we're completely surrounding it, so we're providing road service to it, we're providing all of that, we're not getting tax benefits for it. In some cases, we may already have an agreement to service them with water, some cases we would not. We would have to service them at that point, right?
Right, correct. Once they're incorporated.
Additionally, though, they could sell it as its current use, and they could still sell the property in its current use, and it would stay non-conforming. It's when they go to do something with it, change it.
Correct. There are
develop it
provisions.
some way.
Right, so there are provisions in the Land Development Code in regards to nonconformities that if the use is abandoned for a certain amount of time, but essentially if it's a single-family home and they sell it to another single-family home and it's deficient with building code, unless it's a life safety issue, most likely the codes would remain, they would be allowed to use it as they would.
Okay,
And then the benefit to the village is exactly what you're talking about. One of the issues is a free rider problem where a person might live in an unincorporated parcel on a village street and they're getting snowplow service, police, all those different things, and not necessarily contributing the same way as someone that's
In the
incorporated.
reality, all of these are getting police service.
Correct.
Correct? Chief,
Well,
Deputy
yeah.
Chief? All of these are getting police service because the county's not getting to them. We're going to them, right? So, all right.
So specifically in one of those instances where you're neutral, if there's a issue or a free rider sort of service issue, then potentially it might be in the best interest to annex by ordinance one of those pieces of property if it doesn't negatively impact the village.
Okay. Basically, what we're trying to do is clean up our boundaries for where we have to service everything anyways.
Yep. And avoid the pitfalls, I guess, of some existing developments. So again, this would be an instance where the staff was recommending annexation. This piece of property is located, let's see here, 14101 Wolf Road. As you can see, the evaluation and ranking criteria are included in each exhibit. Subdivision potential, existing street infrastructure, existing water and sewer, stormwater, and then some fiscal impacts, community benefits, external factors. Public Works has a direct comment in each one of these, and the 2021 recommendation is included with the highlighted recommendation. Let's see, there's a dead-end street on the east lot that may be extended for a new subdivision. However, much of the property is floodplain, thus limiting potential for subdivision. Given the environmental sensitivity, there is increased potential for adverse impact from development under county jurisdiction. So essentially, if what this is saying is if this is primarily floodplain, given our current regulations, it would be difficult to make this a profitable development. Potentially, the village would choose to annex this so that someone couldn't pursue the same development in Cook County, and then the village would not have any control, and perhaps the floodplain regulations are different, something along those lines. But that's essentially how this guides through each one of these properties. Next slide.
Yeah, we don't need to go through every property
Just
here.
three, but that's essentially how it goes.
So, but just, pointing out this property. So, obviously, we see what the benefits are to us, the benefits to whoever develops that. You already have an annexation agreement. If it is a single-family home, you're getting access to all of our facilities. You no longer have to pay township rates for all that stuff.
Right.
The library district would also then tax you, and you're going to have to. But you're also going to get access to that as opposed to having to pay whatever the fees are for that. So they're going to get access to all of those services directly, and they're going to get a vote.
That
they don't
helps
currently
sometimes
have.
too.
Correct.
So the next steps, again, there's reasons why we wouldn't want to annex some of these pieces of property unless there was an agreement. This is right at 153rd and 109th. So adjacent to a recent proposal for, can't think of the name of it now, Waterford Point. So when this piece of property, unincorporated piece of property was developed, there was a subdivision to the north of it called Crystal Springs and Crystal Springs Unit 2. Crystal Springs Unit 2 was approved for development that actually in the development agreement required that the properties be on septic systems, mechanical septic systems, until such time that services were available. Those services will be available when those properties to the west are developed. But in the meantime, the houses on 109th Court, I think, have all been built in county regulations. So what's highlighted here is all those existing homes, the deficient roadway, and those different things. So if we were to annex this, we would want to condition it heavily and put some of that burden on the upgrades to whoever was looking to develop it.
To the county or to the property owners.
Right. And then moving forward.
That's an issue here too, right, is some of these, the county would like to get off their books as well. So there is the potential that some of those upgrades, like to the roads, that you may be able to get them to do.
And then take over maintenance, perhaps.
Correct.
Right.
If we take jurisdiction.
Exactly.
I mean, it might be a bit of a stretch to hope the county actually contributes to anything, but we can certainly ask if they want them off their books.
Similar to jurisdictional transfer that we're contemplating for 143rd.
Correct.
So moving forward and looking for direction from the committee, there's the draft of the letter that will go to property owners that were included in this study. The intent is to encourage at least a conversation with the village, and if it's a property that's been identified to annex by agreement or voluntarily, staff will have those discussions and start to move in towards the recommendations of the plan that is before you. So we would send the letter, give a pretty lengthy or generous amount of time to understand what that means, be available to explain the different options, and move forward from there. If there's any other questions.
And then based on the feedback that we get at that point, we will come back to the board with if we need to take other steps, similar to what Ed mentioned, the annexation by ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
And just the revenue assumption, what is that now?
Very general and basic.
I mean, that's not what we get, or is that just total taxes?
That would be
property tax for us.
property tax for us.
That's
yes.
for the village?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, it's an estimate.
It would be us, and then the library would get some percentage. Everybody else, the taxing bodies are the same.
Correct. So that's what we try to do, is at least assign a number to it, but clearly it was very difficult to do, so.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
So there is a cost per year for each of these, but the benefits are access to all of the services. And from our perspective, a lot of those services, from their perspective, they're going to say, we're already getting them all.
Right.
And we're going to say, well, yeah, we're paying for it, and our taxpayers are paying for it, so.
Correct.
So we're just looking for consensus if the board is okay to proceed with this route.
So I think it makes sense to reach out to people and see if you can get voluntary, anybody that we can get voluntarily to clean up our borders. We're already maintaining a lot of these properties anyways, and we're already servicing them through agreement with Cook County, or the fact that they don't show up. So we're there anyhow.
We control the process a lot more if we get them to come to the table opposed to forcing them, and then we lose some control, so.
Correct. And and as far as the neutral ones, I mean, anything that there's not a negative associated with it, I don't know why you wouldn't try those as well.
Sure.
And at least ask and see where we're at.
That's what we'll do.
Start that process first, and that process alone will be short.
Right.
So then we'll see where we're at when that's all done.
Yep.
We definitely have to start cleaning up the edges of our borders so that we have better understanding of where all of our roads are, and so that we're servicing everything inside of our borders.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Compass.
So definitely it'd be nice that it be voluntary. Ed, I can't really tell necessarily from the addresses here. Are a lot of these adjacent properties? And then the reason I'm asking is my question would be, what happens when we have a situation where there's voluntary and folks that don't? Are we going to create more pockets for ourselves that we have to manage in the future?
So the way the study is broken out, they're areas.
Okay.
So in order to be eligible for the involuntary annexation, it has to be less than 60 acres. In order to annex a piece of property, it has to be adjacent somehow, and we would like it to be contiguous. So we've identified these as such, I guess is the way to say it. It doesn't necessarily have to work that way, but there are certain criteria where it has to be adjacent if you're going to annex it, and if you're going to force annex it, it has to be surrounded and meet some other criteria from the state.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Radiszewski.
So for a forced annexation, can they dispute it?
I suppose they could disagree with it, but the way the statute reads is that the village can do it without the consent of the owner.
So I have another question. You had two of the pending. I don't know if you had dove into that on your spreadsheet in the yellow.
Yeah, so there was two, as we were doing this and we looked at all the previous properties that were looked at in 2007, there's actually two properties that were in the process of annexing into the village while we were evaluating this.
Okay, so it's already being done.
So they've either are still within that process or have completed it. I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Okay, and then I did read your letter, but you explained what non-conforming is, and thank you, because that was like one of my questions.
No problem.
But if I have that question, I'm just wondering if the person receiving that letter would have the same question. Maybe we can define what that means.
Sure. A lot of people use the term grandfathered, but non-conforming is essentially if a new regulation is enacted and then in sometime in the future, a building is built and sometime in the future that regulation is changed, then that building doesn't have to come up to the new standard.
Right,
It's
but
not
I think the recipients that are getting that letter would probably want to hear that.
Right.
So maybe like anticipate what would that homeowner's questions be, and almost answering it in the letter might just encourage them to want to say yes.
Will do. It'll be,
Just my thought.
we want people to talk about this. We want to at least know what they're thinking in terms of their property, so we'll do our best to do that.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, sounds like we have marching orders
Thank you.
on that. Okay.
State roads flooding updates.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. The purpose of this presentation is to give you an update on the flooding that we regularly see on our roadways. Those roadways are state roadways. These are the three roadways, 143rd, Southwest Highway, and Wolf Road. So what I'll explain is that what's the current status, what we are doing, and what might be being done to get those addressed. So this is just a quick map. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but because this map will come back again. Southwest Highway, this is where flooding we notice. This is the 143rd Street where roadway was closed for the last 2 weeks or so, almost. And then we have flooding along Wolf Road. This is a Wilcook Road. This is not a state road. This is a county road. But we have been dealing this with Cook County, and we have been able to manage it with the PW's help and some work done by the Cook County, so I will not discuss that item.
So all our flooding locations are state roads?
Excuse me?
All our flooding locations are state roads, pretty much.
That's correct.
With the exception of the one that we've already got a plan in place to how to handle that.
Yeah, that's correct. So the three roadways that I mentioned, they can be addressed if the roadway widening projects, and all of them are in design, in various stages of design. If the state can allocate us about $200 million, we can fix all of the flooding issues as well as widen the roadways. So to date, Southwest Highway is the only one that has been funded by the state.
And Southwest Highway, when we met on this before a lot of the board members were here, they were pushing it up to 2021. Now it's back to 2022. Now it's back to 2023, which was where it started to begin with. So they basically fed us a line of crap.
Maybe we can get naming rights for the road.
So they fed us a line of crap, and now they're going to fix it. But the one good thing that we got out of those meetings is that we were able to uncover that the state had told the county not to release water from McGinnis Slough, which is obviously a lot of the water storage capacity. And so now they're managing those releases again so that we're not seeing the flooding we saw for those 2 years for the long period of time.
So 143rd Street, my focus will be this point where this roadway was closed for the last 2 weeks, close to 2 weeks or so. There is another spot west of 108. I will discuss that briefly. This location floods quite regularly, and it certainly shuts down our roadway. And like I said, 108 is also another point where it. So we have divided this project into, as you have heard this before from me, that western section and eastern section. Western section is from Wilcook to Wolf Road, and we initiated a widening project about 22 years ago. And we're still in that design process. So in that project, the flooding at Long Run Creek, that's where the location is where the flooding happens, will be addressed by raising the roadway by 5 feet. The whole roadway will be raised by 5 feet, and that will address the flooding issue. Phase 1 of that is complete. Phase 2 is at 90% for about last 5, 6, 7 years, because we cannot finish Phase 2 until IDOT or state allocates funds for construction. Without that, IDOT does not allow anyone to finish Phase 2, so we are just in a holding pattern and just sitting on it. Practically, the project is ready to basically shovel ready. If we can get the funds within a few months, we'll be ready to actually excavate the ground.
So Kashid, we started this project 22 years ago, so that's what, so one of the things that is, I think, confusing to the public is we keep saying we're going into Phase 1 engineering. No, we're not going into Phase 1 engineering. We have to update Phase 1 engineering because they never fixed the road, and so now it has to be, the Phase 1 engineering expires after a certain period of time, what, 10 years? And then we have to go back and redo it again and update it. And so that's why these things are happening, because they have not addressed it in the last 2 decades. And we have to do that so that we don't have to pay the federal government back for what they've funded for those that parts of the engineering project.
Yeah, the feds gives us 10 years. Either you build it or you pay the money back. As you all know, but Mayor, myself, and the village manager, we wrote a letter to IDOT for a jurisdictional transfer. Just quickly, what is a jurisdictional transfer is when IDOT actually builds a roadway according to the standards, then we take it over as full ownership of that. So IDOT can get rid of maintenance and any liability for future forever. So we have made that officially, that request over 2 years ago. That letter was received by IDOT, and we're waiting for them to accept it. For them to accept it, meaning they have to put the money in and construct the roadway. So just a quick condition on 2022, what happened just last week. Roadway was closed for about 2 weeks. Village team worked with IDOT to clear the Long Run Creek culvert. It's a very similar problem that what we have on Southwest Highway. The culvert was somewhat clogged. Then we also, with IDOT and PW staff, went ahead and we created what I call it, on the spot swales on the south side as well as on the north side of 143rd. This is not a permanent solution. I want to make sure that what was done is just a temporary patchwork that may help with some of the storms, but it will not address. Maybe comes May, the month of May, we may have some other issues that will come up there. We have also requested IDOT for a meeting to address or come up with some solutions for 143rd Street, similar to what we did for Southwest Highway, because at this point in time, I don't know when they will fund the project for expansion.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the least expensive portion of the roadway, and it's pretty much, as you pointed out, shovel-ready. So what was this, like 12 million to do this?
It's close to $15 million altogether, including engineering and all of that. So about $15 million will get that portion from Wolf Road to Wilcock Road will be done. This is the most expensive part of the project, the eastern section from Wolf Road to Southwest Highway. It does not have a whole lot of flooding issue, but west of 108, we do see some flooding. And then we also see some flooding issues or challenges near west and 143rd. We will be spending in 2022 and 2023 $3 million of our own money, $1 million of state funds to design the Phase 2 part of it. Flooding will be addressed by a comp storage area at 143rd and Wolf Road. Phase 1 is almost complete. I'm literally like a few weeks just waiting for some final confirmation. Once I have that, Phase 1 will be literally complete. Phase 2 is starting now. And then the project will be ready for construction in 2024. That was the status for 143rd Southwest Highway. This is the part that we'll be talking now.
So what's important to note on 143rd is we've had multiple discussions, and the Southwest Conference of Mayors allocates points, as does Will County, towards projects that they deem are important. It's been the #1 priority project since I have been mayor. Okay, so that's 5 years. It's been the #1 priority for the entire Southwest Conference of Mayors, so all of the towns in the Southwest Conference of Mayors. Not only that, Will County allocated some of its points to this project, even though it's not in Will County, because Will County has approved widening from Bell Road to State, which means from 355 to I-57, the only part that's not 4 lanes wide, 4 lanes of traffic, in this case will be 5 with a turn lane, is from Southwest
Southwest.
Highway to Will Cook, the busiest section of that whole road. Makes absolutely zero sense. And everyone in the region is saying it's their number one priority. So there has been a lot of political pressure put on from a lot of towns. We're going to have 2 new elected officials that have that area. So I've talked to both of them this weekend, and we're going to try and get, even though they don't have it yet, to try and start putting some pressure on IDOT to at least get moving on this one section, because that fixes the flooding problem, and then it kickstarts the rest of the project, which might take a few more years, but at least the flooding problem will get addressed.
Just to add that to Mayor, there's about 18,000 cars that go through 143rd Street on a daily basis. So when we shut down, because of flooding, those 18,000 cars were going somewhere. They didn't stop, but they were going somewhere.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Campos.
So just want to add, you had back there that we worked with IDOT on clearing the culvert. I think you're being polite. From what I understand, the village did that work. Is that incorrect?
That's correct.
So I just want folks to understand that, this while it is a jurisdictional challenge, we have to rely on the state and the county to do these things. The village is not simply standing back on this. We are proactive in addressing all of these issues. Our Public Works group was the ones that cleared out that culvert and made it so that we can go forward. We have to do it with their permission, of course, but I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And there's $1.7 billion of funding for infrastructure from the ARP bill, which we can argue whether that was money well spent or not, but it was given to this state. It's time for them to actually contribute a little bit to somebody's in the top 10 of their tax base of the entire state.
Yeah, IDOT was out there though with us, helping us. They provided some of the rock and so forth to stabilize the edge, but our guys were the ones digging and so forth like that. So
fair enough.
Southwest Highway is really the most commonly flooded area in our village, between 131st and 135th. It impacts several properties, Palos Country Club, as well as our access to our nature center. Primary reasons are listed there. Basically, it's collapsed culvert, insufficient flow capacities. There's a large quantity of debris and size of debris that comes through those culverts, and they clog that. And then Mayor was just mentioning about the McGinnis Slough, the water level in McGinnis Slough. We have now established an understanding with the Forest Preserve that they actually draw down the McGinnis Slough before the rain season, which allows us to have more capacity, water storage capacity in the slough. And then the last one is the sinkholes. There are 2 sinkholes that are still there. We closely monitor Public Works as well as IDOT and tries to clear those culverts as quickly as we can. Just like Trustee Campos was saying, that village use its own equipment and staff. Even last year, we used our pump for days to pump the water from west side to the east side, so that we can reduce the intensity and duration of the flooding. I mentioned to you about drawdown, and so what is nice part about this one is that finally IDOT has heard us, and they have awarded a contract for replacing the culvert and doing some grade work. That should be starting, I would say, in the first to second week of May, if they're weather permitting, and I would say it's about 8 weeks of worth of work. So this construction season, everything as I see from IDOT, the flooding issue along Southwest Highway will be addressed in quite a better way than ever before.
But we still have a road project that will redo the whole thing, so we're basically spending money to do something that we're going to redo in a year anyways, correct?
No, Mayor, so that we worked with them a solution that this will be so the culvert work will be staying in ground for permanently.
Okay.
The rest of the work will follow up. So the actual project that you were mentioning a few minutes before, that is going to extend late into this year and into next year. The roadway widening project will extend into 23.
Okay, so they are going to start the roadway widening this year?
Late this year.
Okay, perfect.
Now, Wolf Road, there's 3 spots on Wolf Road where we have flooding issues, and mostly 171st Street and Wolf Road, that's where Bluff Point is another subdivision that is there. That's where it generally floods. Grading and flow issues are the main issue. Marley Creek is unable to handle the water that needs to go into Marley Creek. It's not the creek actually water to get the water from Wolf Road to Marley Creek is the challenge. Topography is supportive of this work. We need to take a look at some ditching, grading between Wolf Road and Marley Creek. There's no near-term solution. I do not have anything that I can offer you at this point in time, but we are continuously looking for some solutions. And as soon as we figure out something, we'll come back to you. We initiated a roadway widening projects like others for Wolf Road from 143rd to 183rd. Mostly village fund is used for phase 1 study, so phase 1 is in progress. Funding for phase 2 and construction has not been identified yet. That's the other part where we have seen last year also some flooding is at 151st and 143rd, between 151st and 143rd. Mostly it happened because of beaver dam or ice dams. Last year IDOT did a decent amount of work to create a ditch on the west side of Wolf Road, which should address this issue, but it still requires a continued maintenance for beaver dams or ice dams or so. That's my presentation, if you have any other questions.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Anybody for comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Rashewski?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye. 7:15, we'll start the regular board meeting.
Trustee Katsinas?
Here.
Trustee Malani?
Here.
Trustee Compass?
Here.
Trustee Reardon?
Here.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Here.
Mayor Pika?
Here.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the February 21st, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustee meeting on February 21st, 2022.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
Accounts payable approval?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
I'm sorry, hold on for a second here. I move to approve the accounts payable for February 22nd, 2022 through March 7th, 2022 in the amount of $3,173,622.68.
Second.
Thanks, Freddie.
Any questions? Call the roll.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
Consent agenda?
Item A, payroll approval. Item B, Lawler re-subdivision of Peony Place subdivision, site plan, landscape plan, plat of subdivision. Item C, Lawler re-subdivision of Peony Place subdivision ordinance. Item D, resolution for local public agency agreement for federal participation with IDOT for the 104th Avenue multi-use path from 159th to 163rd Place. Item E, a resolution regarding surface transportation program local funding for the new roundabout at 153rd Street and Ravinia Avenue. Item F, a resolution regarding surface transportation program local funding for the 82nd Avenue multi-use path. Item G, a resolution regarding surface transportation program local funding for the new McGinnis Slough multi-use path. Item H, a resolution regarding surface transportation program local funding for the new 167th Street multi-use path.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
move to approve items A through H of the consent agenda.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
RFQ 22-004, professional MEP and architectural services.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani.
move to approve entering into master services agreements for professional MEP and architectural services with Cordigan Clark Associates, Farnworth Group Incorporated, Kluber Architects Engineers, Valdez Engineering Company, Tria Architecture, Williams Architects, and Robert Juris Associates Architects from 2022 through 2024, with the option to extend individual master services agreements for up to 2 additional years and authorize the village manager to execute all related contracts subject to village attorney review.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? And I guess, George, you want to just give a brief explanation?
Joe, if you could just really quickly.
Yeah. So we went out to the street to have MEP and architectural services that we can utilize for the next coming 3 years, plus the 2 options. The team really, the selection committee, went through a 2-step process. We first used a numerical scale to evaluate the firms. After that, we used a descriptive scale for our final after the interviews, and we determined that there were 7 firms, applicants, that were deemed that we could utilize for the village.
And so for every one of these types of contracts, we will now, similar to what we do with our engineering agreements, we have a pool that we will go to that are pre-approved, and each one will be offered the option to submit a quote for this. If anything is above $25,000, it will come before the board. Otherwise, we will just approve them internally.
What this does is it allows us to not have to have these qualifying procedures for these, and so we can get these done much more quickly. But it gives us, I think we've got 7 here, and so these 7 can bid every single project. So we'll still get multiple bids, but these are pre-qualified through this, and then we'll go back through this process down in the future after these contracts run out. Call the roll.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye.
Recreation Program Guide RFP?
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon.
I move to approve awarding the production of the Recreation and Parks Program Guide to Indiana Printing and Publishing Company beginning summer of 2022, continuing each season through the production of the winter/spring 2025 program guide for the specified amounts in the proposal not to exceed the budgeted amount.
Second.
So I guess I'll just open it with my issue, and then everybody else can jump in. And George, you already know what my issue is that these guys backed out of a previous contract. And I understand that they did it because of paper costs, but there was nothing in their contract about us covering the difference if their paper costs increased, right? And so, I mean, I want to thank them for, coming to us and being honest with us. At the same time, I don't see anything in this that says that our costs are going to go down if their paper costs go down.
They have agreed to that.
I did speak with them, and they did put in writing that they would pass along the cost to us.
Savings?
Cost savings to us?
Cost savings to us.
So, okay, so yeah, so they have to, so whatever that is, they have to report that to us, what their costs, what this is based off of, and then any savings they have, that they need to identify that, show their invoice on it, so you can see the unit pricing so that we get that cost savings. That should be part of that contract.
It is, and we have that also in the staff write-up here as well. They've agreed to that.
I missed it because I saw it before it got redone. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
There was this is over budget for this price that we're entering into is over budget, and we just plan on collecting it. Is that due to these price increases, or do we expect to see more of these coming down the pike?
Yeah.
I'm sure with what's happening right now with inflation and petroleum costs, I'm sure that we're going to be seeing a lot more inflationary pressure on everything we're buying and services, goods and services.
Thanks.
Yeah, diesel on the way back from Springfield today, $5.13 a gallon. It's over double what it was 2 years ago. So that's a pretty hefty increase to any goods you're buying anywhere. And that will hit us and all of our residents pretty hard. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Campus?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye.
Staff augmentation, Lauterbach and Amon account analyst.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to approve an amendment to the village's agreement with Lauterbach and Amon LLP dated March 27, 2020, and amended September 10, 2021 to provide one full-time accounting analyst at a cost of $11,500 per month, increasing by 3% annually.
Second.
George, what's the impact on the budget here?
That is the impact on the budget. It is it's something that wasn't budgeted for. We are going to come back and ask for a budget amendment on that. But it's going to be offset. We had some vacancies in those in finance, so some of those cost savings will be offset.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Reardon.
Is this are you expecting this person like the whole entire year, or is this just when we need them for a month, we pay them $11,500, or we hire them basically for $130, whatever that is, $20,000?
Yeah, it's a permanent placement of this position. And as far as actual, like if you compare the pricing, it's similar to all-in costs, benefits that a full-time staff employee would cost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing the math on this at what, $138,000 a year, but you got $30,000 in healthcare costs, so that's $108,000. You've got what, 12 or 13% IMRF that we're hitting. So it's probably what, and then Social Security on top of that. So you're probably talking about an $85,000 position, and I'm sure we're paying someone more than that for this position, correct?
It is very close, and the same price or similar price that we pay for our existing staff was actually that we're paying Lauterbach and Amon was actually a savings to the village. The staff was more expensive.
All right. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
Amend Title VII, Chapter 4, Number of Class B Liquor License Ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to adopt an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance Amending Title VII, Chapter 4 of the Orland Park Municipal Code regarding the available number of Class B liquor license issued by the Village of Orland Park, Cook and Will Counties, Illinois."
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
Resolution honoring the rights of victims, affirming a vote of no confidence in Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, calling on Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox to resign in order to help restore the public's confidence in the criminal justice system, and calling upon other elected bodies to approve similar resolutions.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to adopt a resolution entitled, "Resolution Honoring the Rights of Victims, Affirming a Vote of No Confidence in Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, calling on Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox to resign in order to help restore the public's confidence in the criminal justice system, and calling upon other elected bodies to approve similar resolutions."
Second.
I will read the resolution. I'm sure that all of the board members before voting will have something to say. I'll read the resolution, and then I'll let everyone speak before I have my comments. Resolution honoring the rights of victims, affirming a vote of no confidence in Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, calling on County State's Attorney Kim Fox to resign in order to help restore the public's confidence in the criminal justice system, and calling upon other elected bodies to approve similar resolutions. Whereas protecting public safety in the Village of Orland Park is the village's highest responsibility, and whereas Cook County is experiencing life-changing and life-threatening crime with unprecedented homicidal activities putting the general public at risk of hurt, harm, and danger. The escalating crime wave includes unsolved murders, shootings, killings of children and youth, and criminal activities which are of such a nature that an extreme response of extra help and support is necessary. And whereas the vitality of our community depends on how safe we keep our homes, neighborhoods, schools, and workplaces, because crime and fear of crime diminish the quality of life for all. Whereas crime and fear of crime destroy our trust in others and in institutions, threatening the community's health and prosperity, and whereas tens of thousands of people in Cook County are victims of crime every year, and whereas some victims endure horrific acts of violence, some have personal possessions damaged or stolen, and others are defrauded or exploited financially, and whereas whatever the crime, many victims lose something that can never be fully recovered: a sense of trust and safety. And whereas many of the victims are twice victimized, once by a criminal and once by a criminal justice system that increasingly prioritizes criminals over the safety of law-abiding citizens. And whereas Cook County saw more gun-related homicides in 2021 than in any other year on record. And whereas Cook County's 1,002 gun-related homicides were 121 higher than the previous record from 2020, and almost twice as many as the total from 2019. Whereas in 2021, 86 homicides were recorded with victims under the age of 18, and of those, 12 were under the age of 10. And whereas criminals should be held accountable for their actions, and whereas a Chicago Tribune analysis found that during the Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox's 3 years as Cook County's top prosecutor, her office dropped all charges against 29.9% of felony defendants, a dramatic increase over her predecessor. And whereas the Chicago Tribune analysis also found that despite dropping more felony charges than her predecessor, of the felony cases that have been concluded, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office under prior State's Attorney Anita Alvarez won convictions in 75% of cases during the 3 years of Ms. Alvarez's term in office, higher than the conviction rate achieved by Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, which was just 66 in the first 3 years of her term. And whereas the Illinois Criminal Code compiles Illinois criminal law, including penalties that may be imposed for criminal offenses, including weapons violations, whereas having an abundance of criminal laws in place is inadequate if these laws will not be prosecuted, and whereas the Cook County criminal justice system's soft on crime approach only produces more violent crime and more victims. Now therefore it be resolved by the village president and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Orland Park as follows. The village president and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Orland Park resolve to honor the rights of victims of crimes. The village president and the board of trustees of the Village of Orland Park further resolve to support the prosecution of all crimes, including gun-related crimes, and call for the state's attorney to ensure that residents and businesses of Cook County are kept safe by holding violent offenders accountable and enforcing the maximum bail and punishments allowed by law. The village president and the board of trustees of the Village of Orland Park further resolve to strongly affirm a vote of no confidence in Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx's performance. The village president and the board of trustees of the Village of Orland Park further resolve to call on Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx to resign in order to help restore the public's confidence in the criminal justice system. The village president and the board of trustees of the Village of Orland Park further resolve to call upon other elected bodies to approve similar resolutions. I'll open it up to comments. Any?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
When I was speaking with my mother the other day about making these comments, she told me not to swear. Okay, so I'll try not to. But there is definitely no confidence in Kim Foxx. But there's more than Kim Foxx to blame for this. You've got Tim Evans, Preckwinkle, Kwame Raoul, Governor Pritzker. They should all resign. They're all part of this. They've all contributed to the feeling of, the decline, I should say, the decline in safety. I talked to a client of mine who was in the moving business. He said, business is great. I go, great, where's everybody? He goes, they're all going to, everybody's moving out. They're going to Texas, they're going to Florida, Carolinas. We can't keep up with the business. And I said, oh, so it's a lot of older people moving to retire. He goes, no, these are families with children going to school. They do not feel safe in Illinois. We have got to make, and you can't blame them. You got to make it. We're responsible for trying to make this a safer place. These people are undermining our efforts in this. They've all pledged to stand by the Constitution of the United States. When they first say that pledge, it's kind of laughable because that's the last time they do not abide by the Constitution. But besides them, the other people we can blame are the voters of Cook County. We've got the people who put them in office, particularly Kim Foxx. You've got George Soros with massive millions of contributions. Fred Eichner from North Halsted Street gave over $1 million. Michael Sachs, a investment banker from the North Side, gave over $1 million too. And above all them too is your unions, your Chicago Federation of Labor participants. You see that sign on the front lawn, proud union home. Proud of what? They put this lady, the place is, there's nothing to be proud about putting these rotten, I'll call them Democrats. I'm not fond of the Republican Party either. But they're all the same party. They're the party of Michael Madigan, which, as we've seen, there's somebody convicted every couple months. When I also think of Kim Foxx, I just wonder, is there any virtue out there? And I looked up the definite, some characteristics of virtue. There's honesty, courage, dignity, integrity, I'll say discipline, compassion, prudence. I would not put any of these on these people. And what kind of people they represent? They represent us. They don't represent me, Mr. Mayor. And I think they should all be, I don't know, they should all move out of town. How about that? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Putting the politics of this aside, I agree with a lot of what Bill said, but putting that aside, every single Friday, the village board and the mayor, we get proof of why this is necessary. We get a update on what is going on right here in Orland Park. Forget the rest of Cook County, forget Chicago and the things that people want to talk about in the newspaper where there's a killing every other night or three a night or whatever it is. Right here in Orland Park, we are on the precipice. Our police officers are stressed in terms of the encounters they have with individuals with unbelievable amount of weapons and the numerosity of it. I mean, it's every day. It's every 3-4 times a day on the weekends. And so, and then they're the same people. They see the same offenders every week. They're out 10 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, and the next Saturday. Same guy, same woman that they just ran into that's out on bail on a serious charge, a serious weapons charge. And so there's so many other reasons to support this, but that every Friday when I get that report, I have 4 kids in the area, my wife, we drive around here, that something's going to happen. there's going to be an encounter. I mean, luckily right now, there hasn't been some major event in a parking lot in one of our retail establishments where someone fights back. They're generally, we have the support there, and generally we're able to, quell whatever it happens. But that's not going to continue. With these kind of statistics, every single Friday that we look at this, it's impossible this is not going to end badly for us, for our officers, and, for who knows who surrounding in the area. So something's got to be done, and this is a start. I unfortunately feel a lot of times this falls on deaf ears, but we got to try. We got to try to do something. So I do support it.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Campos.
So I just want to reiterate, our police force has been exceptional, but I wish that they didn't have to be, right? And what I mean by that is they are up against exceptional odds every week, as other trustees have mentioned. We see stats, like one stat that rings in my mind just from this past week, 21 confiscated guns in 18 days. That's guns in the hands of convicted felons. Repeat offenders, over 85%. So this isn't someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time that wasn't aware of what they were doing. This is our police force finding people with illegal weapons before they have the opportunity to commit another serious crime. But we should have a strong partnership with our state's attorney office. Instead, from what we see, week in and week out, day in, day out, the state's attorney's office seems to be acting more as a public defender's office. They seem more interested in putting these folks back on the streets. We heard at the last meeting where the defense attorney asks for a bond. Defense attorney asks for a bond of $50,000 and a judge awards $5,000. Now, thankfully, the village got involved and they got the federal government involved, and we managed to keep that person back in jail where they belong. It's just so frustrating, and it's got to be frustrating for our officers who are doing all of this proactively to make sure that our streets are safe. And I don't want to disparage any of our surrounding neighborhoods. I'm sure they're all doing the very best that they can as well. But I know from a matter of pride that they don't have the police force that we do. And I can only imagine what the Chicago Police Department is feeling when they see this day in and day out. We should have a strong partnership, again, with our state's attorney's office. We don't get it right now.
Any other comments? So, as pointed out, our police department does a phenomenal job. Our crimes, our index crimes against people and person are at the lowest level they've been in 27 years, but they are working their tails off to make that happen. You can't even imagine how hard they are working to make that happen. The stress on them, the pressure on them is unbelievable. And as pointed out, this will end badly somewhere in Cook County or DuPage County or Will County or Lake County, one of the neighboring counties, and it'll all stem from Cook County. This is going to end badly somewhere. The numbers they speak for themselves. But just last week, Kim Foxx gave an address trying to reinvent her disastrous administration. She thinks we will forget. We will not. We will not forget the Jussie Smollett fiasco. We will not forget, and our police officers will not forget, that she routinely blames police before getting the facts. She stated that her policies on retail theft have not changed. She thinks we forgot that she raised the bar for felony retail theft to $1,000 from the state limit of $300. Rather than going south on LaGrange off of I-80 to Will County, criminals now come north to Cook County and Orland Park. How many people, like our own Orland Park resident, have been murdered by stray bullets from gang wars? How many of those gang members have not been charged under the excuse of mutual combatants, claiming exchanging gunfire with another gang makes it self-defense? Are you kidding me? Our residents have to deal with this? The one thing she got right is that 800 murders is unacceptable, though that's not even the correct number. There were over 1,000 gun-related murders and a total of 1,087 homicides in Cook counties in the last year. So maybe she should get her data right. Here is some additional data. In 2016, there were 16 offenders charged with murder who were on electronic monitoring at the time. In 2021, that number rose to over 87. Those charged with aggravated battery while on monitoring rose from 72 in 2016 to 200 in 2021. Those charged with armed violence rose from 6 in 2016 to 52 in 2021, a 767% increase. Those charged with aggravated gun possession rose from 164 to 879, a 436% increase. In 2016, just 62 felons in possession of a gun were allowed out on ankle monitoring. That rose to over 534 in 2021, a 1,761% increase. In 2016, the total number of people on ankle monitoring was 320. That rose to over 1,750 in 2021. In total, a 547% increase under Kim Foxx. Frankly, given that data, it's a miracle the murders aren't even higher. That is a testimony to the fine police officers here and throughout the entire county. As everyone in this room knows, I'm a data guy. This data makes it clear. Kim Foxx has been an absolute failure and should resign from her office, and I will be happy to vote for a vote of no confidence and for this resolution. Call the roll.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye. Passes 7-0.
Temporary Human Resources Staffing Services.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon?
I move to approve the agreement for temporary staffing services with HR Philosophy LLC for 2 temporary employees for the Human Resources Department at a rate of $51 per hour for 40 hours per week per temporary employee from January 18, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. And I move to approve the professional services agreement with Paula Wagner for Human Resources Services from February 21st, 2022 to April 29th, 2022 at a rate of $60 per hour with a maximum of 40 hours per week with an option to be extended on a bi-weekly basis to December 31st, 2022, and approve and authorize the village manager to execute said agreements subject to the village attorney review.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Malani?
Just a question on Paula. I see, first of all, it says that she's starting on February 21st. Has she started already?
Yes, this is retroactive.
Okay. And at a rate of $60 an hour, which is higher than the other 2 temporaries.
It's the other 2 temporaries are clerical. Paula is an analyst or was an analyst for the village.
Okay. And I know she's a previous employee, so I know she understands the organization, but we couldn't find anybody else?
No. So if the board recalls, last time the board approved a temporary agreement with GovHR, and they could not provide anybody for us. It is a seller's market out there right now, so we're very fortunate to get this.
Okay.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye. And I have one other item that I forgot in the mayor's report that came across the desk here just before the board meeting. But, you know, it was mentioned earlier, the gas prices, and, you know, I know Trustee Katsinas said to me in the back room back there about Ukraine, and clearly we need to reverse a lot of oil policies for both Ukraine's sake and for ours. But there is something that we can do, and so we've talked about it prior to this meeting. George and I have. We don't need board approval to do it, but we have vests that our officers can no longer use, but they still do have some useful life in them, and we can't sell them, so we're going to donate them to Ukraine. There's a group in Illinois that is putting those together to get those vests out to the people of Ukraine to help them in this fight. So we'll do what we can. We can't do a lot, but what we can do, we can do. So we're going to do that.
Are there any non-scheduled citizens or visitors here to speak?
We have one, Mary Ann Malin. Reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I took some notes while you all were talking tonight, and thank you for all the hard work that you do. I really appreciate it. One thing that came up when I was here for the Committee of the Whole was about involuntary versus voluntary annexation of properties that are surrounded by the Village of Orland Park that are unincorporated. Is there also a process in place where somebody who's in the Village of Orland Park can become unincorporated so that they can get out from underneath all the debt load and everything that has been added to property owners through the form of real estate, taxes and so on, people who don't participate in the schooling programs and don't participate in the other programs, and would likely be willing to pay for their own trash pickup and so on in order to get out from underneath the debt load. And because municipal bonds and all those are a heavy weight on property owners. And we do have, I'm definitely seeing an encroachment on property rights overall throughout the entire United States, but here specifically, there's overregulation for property owners. There's also, like I said, those are real estate taxes. Do people really own their property at the end of the day? And also, because I would personally rather live in an unincorporated area because the taxes are lower, the prices are usually lower, and there's just more freedom overall. And there was a mention of elections. I don't know a single person who voted for Kip Fox. Not a single person. And I filed FOIA requests with Cook County on elections, and I know that those black boxes that were located throughout Cook County, there was no chain of custody plan for those black boxes.
1 minute.
And they were also, all those black box votes were included as mail-in voting. So there was no postmark on a single one of those, and they were included in the overall count for mail-in voting. There's something seriously wrong with the voting process. And if you want to gain any kind of trust in systems, we need to start with the election process. We need paper ballots. We need to get rid of the electronic voting systems, and we definitely need to get rid of the mail-in voting, those black box ballot boxes, and get back to in-person voting like we had traditionally, because elections have consequences, and fraudulent elections have even worse consequences. I mean, look what we're stuck with Kim Fox. I don't know a single person who voted for her, seriously. Police officers, so on. And also, in addition to that, the elections were 500,000 voters registered in Chicago, Board of Elections. 450,000 of those 500,000 were mail-in ballots. 90% of them, it's just unrealistic that they were all valid. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sure. Please state your name.
Matt Lulich.
In 3 minutes.
Thank you. I was going to start off by talking about Schuessler Park again. Probably the only person around here that's still interested in talking about it, but I had a pretty strong and welcoming audience at the Park and Recreation Advisory Board the other day, so I was able to make a lot of my points there. Maybe they'll get through to the board, maybe they won't. One thing that I have heard, though, is that the fencing that's going around Schuessler Park now is, I originally thought that it was going to be to control the use of the park, but now I'm hearing that it's to keep vehicles off the park. Well, I would suggest that there's a lot less obtrusive ways to do that if you would look into it. Decorative bollards, landscaping buffers, things of that nature, rather than fencing people out of the park, or fencing users out of the park, or fencing cars out of the park. If the true thought is to keep cars out of the park, replace the fence with other means that aren't so, quite frankly, ugly and obtrusive to the neighborhood. But the main reason I came tonight, because I have spoken about Schuessler Park before, is because when I spoke last week at the, or 2 weeks ago at the committee of the whole meeting. Another gentleman spoke after I did. And both of us, I think, were very respectful. We wanted to be heard by our elected officials. And there was no raising of voices. There was no repetition. There was just a collegial request to exchange ideas. And we were both cut off after our 3-minute piece. And I have to say that I represented public bodies for many years. I appeared with clients before public bodies many times. And I can't think of a single time, even in the face of rancor, insults, heated conversations, yelling and shouting, that I ever saw a time limit imposed on a citizen who wanted to come and express their thoughts and their ideas to the public body. I watched the YouTube video. I didn't stay for the village board meeting, but I watched the YouTube video of the comments that were made about the plans for Schuessler Park. I found them to be dismissive, condescending, and bordering on insulting. And with that, I'll make my final point. As I said, I had a lot of experience before public bodies. Never saw a time limit imposed. But I also never saw a citizen or a resident
Time is up.
removed from a podium by the public body by an armed police officer. I found that to be more than sad, more than disappointing that that happens in my hometown of over 40 years. So that's the main reason why I came here to speak tonight. And I didn't even see a raised eyebrow when a resident was removed by an armed police officer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So I will address your minute limit. I've been to many board meetings, and I've spoken to many other boards besides here, and every one of them has a time limit. Additionally, last week, 2 weeks ago, I gave you both well over the 3 minutes we allow. It's been the board's policy for as long as I know. There's been a time limit. So before I got here, there was a time limit placed on people giving commentary, because we cannot have people filibustering for 20, 30 minutes on issues because that's what they choose to do, and we've had people try to do that. So that's why we have limits. We also had 8 public hearings, or 8 different public meetings where people could speak on these issues. It's not like they have not been heard many, many, many times, and all of that feedback is given back to the board when we make our decisions. So that's, and I will stand by my comments from last week that we can't make everyone happy. We just won't be able to do that. So we'll do the best we can, make the decisions we can based on the information that's given to us. Our Recreation Advisory Board unanimously gave us the recommendations that we approved last week, and we are fixing the park that everyone clearly from the survey says is the most important park to fix. We're fixing it. I think sometimes we have to keep a perspective on that. We don't always get what we want, and but the board's making the best decision they can with the information they have, and we are fixing a park that hasn't been fixed since it was built 50-some years ago. So, and it's going to be a lot more usable because it's not going to be flooded all the time. That'll open up to board comments. Trustee Compass.
So happy Casimir Pulaski Day. I suspect I'm going to be jumping on Trustee Healy's word just a little bit here, but this holiday is unique to Illinois, but with all that's happening in the world today, I thought it was even more poignant that we honor the father of the American cavalry today. It's a Polish nobleman. Pulaski fought for his homeland against occupying Russians. Doesn't that sound familiar? His rebellion was unsuccessful, which led his destiny to Paris, where he met Benjamin Franklin, who was on a diplomatic mission to France to solicit aid for the American Revolution. Franklin convinced him to enlist in the American Revolutionary War, where he rose through the ranks to Brigadier General of the Cavalry. At the Battle of Brandywine, his courageous charge averted a colonial defeat, and he was credited for saving the life of George Washington. If you wonder why a foreign nobleman would fight and ultimately sacrifice his life in 1779 for American liberty, his own words best answer that question. Quote, "I came here where freedom is being defended to serve it and to live and die for it." Unquote. It is in that spirit that I consider our own servicemen and women deployed overseas in the continuous fight for our freedom. I would like to congratulate and thank the Village Veterans Commission and April Chevrolet for organizing and hosting the military care package event that happened this last Friday. It was amazing to see so many volunteers donate and help pack boxes. There were so many volunteers. It happened so quickly that if you blinked, you missed it. The boxes were filled just that fast. And I hope that those packages bring just a bit of comfort from home to our troops abroad. And thinking about how General Pulaski fought off Russian invasion in Poland, I pray for peace and freedom from tyranny for the people of Ukraine. Thank you.
Trustee Malani.
Well, there went my happy Casimir Pulaski Day speech. And probably will cut Bill a little short here tonight as well. However, I also want to quickly recognize someone for his service and what he's done. Chief Mitchell, you have announced your retirement, and somebody that you're definitely going to be missed here. You're a tremendous leader. It shows with our police department, and we're definitely going to miss you here. So thank you for all that you've done for us.
Trustee Katsinas.
Thank you. We're going to miss Chief, but we do have somebody in the wings that is probably going to be just as good as the chief we have. So thank you for that. I also like to say thank you to the board members for passing that resolution. Crime is out of control. It's a shame when the criminals seem to have more rights than the victims. I recently went downtown Chicago, somewhere I love to go on the train. When my kids were small, we used to go down there frequently. And recently I went down there by myself, and I was very afraid. And it kind of surprised me, looking over my shoulder, afraid of a person walking down the street next to me. Why? Because this crime and what's going on instills fear. It affects how you live. So thank you to my fellow members and the mayor for bringing this forward. And please pray for the residents and the public in Ukraine. Thank you.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Well, I definitely want to also thank the chief. So best wishes to you on your retirement. And I wanted to take a moment to mention, as I mentioned last meeting, March is Women's History Month, and tomorrow, Tuesday the 8th, is International Women's Day, which is a global holiday to commemorate the cultural, political, and social economic achievements of women. This is an opportunity, especially in 2022, to act, improve upon, and also rebuild post-pandemic workplaces without bias for everyone's benefit. And that's appropriate, as this year's theme is Break the Bias. According to Lean-In, an international community dedicated to helping women, nearly 3/4 of women around the world experience bias at work. The challenge, be it gender, race, or is that bias is often, it's unconscious. It happens without you even realizing it. So it's just an opportunity to just realize if you have those unconscious biases, and try to do something to change it. Employers especially are wise to keep all of this in mind as businesses moves into new post-pandemic paradigms, which in so many ways will strongly encourage, if not demand, workplace equity, equal opportunities for all, and the realization that when you seek quality employees, they bring themselves, their whole selves, and just to also just value women. And that's it.
Trustee Healy.
Thank you, Sean, for your comments, your insightful comments about Casimir Pulaski. I think his inspiring work and all that would be, it'd be nice to have a reminder, like a portrait on a wall somewhere.
He's not a president.
Well, he's not a president. No, but he has virtue, is what he has.
I
So.
told you, Bill, we're planning on putting a
Well,
ceiling.
it's, let's put St. Patrick up there first. We need a day for the Irish, I think, is what I would do. So, but also thank you, Trustee Katsinas, for your mentioning of prayer. I think we should pray. I'm a big believer in that. And but besides prayer, it's also taking action and donating those safety vests. You know, I hate giving away anything, but the safety vest would be a great symbol for everything. So I'm glad we're doing that. Thanks, George. All right, thank you.
Trustee Reardon.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago, the invasion had not occurred yet. My comments were to hope for some peace and things would go more diplomatically. And of course, praying for the people of Ukraine, which everyone is doing. But closer to home, all of our service members, no matter where they are now in, much more danger. Okay, they're on high alert. They are targets. What's going to happen next in the next couple of weeks on how we handle, how the United States from, out in Washington or wherever they make the decisions is going to put all of them in harm's way. And so that's what I think we also need to be focused on, because wherever they are stationed, it's more dangerous now for them. So, keep them in your thoughts as well. Chief, you'll be missed. Good luck in your next endeavors. I'm sure we'll see you again before the end, not just tonight. And even though today didn't seem like it, spring is right around the corner.
Thank you, everyone. And regarding the military care package drive, so at Apple Chevrolet last Friday, so we received about $465 in donations. We filled 85 large UPS mailing boxes. I'm sorry, I misquoted when I was on TV. I said 100. It was only 85. And then 4 to 5 boxes of miscellaneous items were also collected, and they were all stored and shipped. And we can't thank all the volunteers, Apple Chevrolet, the Veterans Commission enough for all that they're doing. And what I learned there as well is that anything that was perishable, say in the next few weeks, went locally, went in the U.S. and went stateside so that it could still be used, and the stuff with longer lifespans on them before expiring went overseas. So great work by everybody. Tonight Parks came up again, and I'll point out that 5 years ago I promised that I would get the crazy debt under control, and we did. We've taken off almost half of it, which is what's given us some capacity to actually fix some of the parks. We also said that we're going to fix the parks. We talked about the need to fix parks, and when I got here, I realized very quickly that we were fixing one park every 2 years. We have 66 of them now. It's 132 years to get through all the parks. With those 66 parks, inside of those, we have 3 major ones. We have the John Humphrey Complex, we have Centennial, and then the first one that we ever had, which was Schuessler Park. John Humphrey Complex, we had something to fix it before anyone on this board was here. In fact, before anyone, maybe with the exception of sitting at this table, with the exception of Ray. Ray was working here, but he was not the director. We had a project to fix John Humphrey. It was blocked for 2 years. Delayed fixing all the other parks because that was the first one, because we can't take everything offline at one time. So we ended up completely revamping John Humphrey as soon as we got 3 new board members. We approved that immediately, and we got moving on that particular project, and then realized we needed to look at all the others as well, because clearly, we have a Fairway has had a major problem there, or major road and sewer project there, and we had a 5-year plan to redo Schuessler Park, and we said, hey, let's not do 5 years. They've already had 5 years of roads. Let's do this park as quickly as we possibly can. So that's when we came up with one. We re-looked at all our parks, and now we're fixing them in a different way instead of one every 2 years. We've gotten into, I believe it's 16 of them in the last 2 years, and about another 9 this year. And then we're also not only that, we did over almost 24 basketball courts, tennis courts, etc. as well. So, and I think another 12 or 15 pavilions also. So instead of one park and just totally revamping it, we took a different approach so we could get into a lot of parks in a lot of different parts of the community. So we embarked on this master plan. It's been almost a year that it's been and as noted, it was about 8 public meetings, I think at least, a rec advisory board meeting. There was 4 different iterations of the plan, and again, we won't make everyone happy. We can't, but it's what I ran on. It's what we're doing. The board has approved it. We've gotten massive buy-in from not only the public, from the rec advisory board, also from all of the youth associations were involved in this process as well. So we're trying to meet everyone's needs. We can't make everyone happy, but I'm very happy with what we've gotten done, and because of the bonding situation where interest rates are projected to go up, and we're planning on doing this next year, and because we do have money set aside this year from the ARP money, we have $5 million. We're going to start this year on one of the parks, and then do Centennial Park West next year and start that. Because of that bonding, we're going to bond with about in the next month or so, correct? And we will actually get Schuessler and Centennial started this year so that they're both done next year is the goal. So we're going to ramp these things up forward and get things fixed, and I think that's a lot of progress for the village. And we clearly have more stuff to do with our ponds and everything else. We've been kind of getting through all these backlogs, but roads and parks were pretty critical for the community, I think, pretty important for the community. I think we've done a great job, and I want to thank the board for all their efforts, thank the rec advisory board for all their effort, and the recs department for all of their all the feedback, the surveys, and everything else they did on that. And then, Trustee Healy said we need a day for the Irish, and I'm like, I think it's March 5th, March 6th, March 12th, March 13th, March 17th, probably the 16th, probably the 18th, and probably the 21st and 22nd this month as well. There's a lot of days for the Irish this month.
Yeah, what's your point?
So just want to remind you that we do have a lot of days for that. And my mom was born on St. Patrick's Day, named Patricia, so I'm honorary Irish. With that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Compass.
Move to go into executive session for A, approval of minutes, B, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performances, or dismissal of specific village employees.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Here.
Trustee Katsinas?
Here.
Trustee Malani?
Here.
Trustee Compass?
Here.
Trustee Reardon?
Here.
Trustee Rashevsky? Here. Mayor Pika?
Here.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani.
I move to confirm the village manager's terms for the interim appointment of Eric Rossi as chief of police for the village of Orland Park.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Rashevsky?
Aye.
Mayor Pika?
Aye. Adjourned.